Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. In this video, we are going over the July monthly report, which in my opinion is actually a pretty solid report compared to some that we've gotten over the past couple months. But there are some pretty great updates in here. Couple things about some ships that I think everyone's excited for. And then one of the most exciting things for me is the fact that engineering should now actually be confirmed to be coming to the EPTU soon. Now, soon isn't a date, but we will talk about that in just a little bit here. But before we get into it, if you are enjoying the content, feel free to subscribe and stick around. I do have channel memberships open if you wanted to go the extra mile, and feel free to join the community Discord. I will have a link for that down below, and I would absolutely love to have you there. Outside of that, let's get into what I think is a pretty solid monthly report. Now, starting it off, we have the AI section. We're just going to go over just two real quick things in here. The first being that the AI features team continued to develop new creatures, including prototype gameplay for a boss fight. As a part of this, new tech was created that makes this process faster and more iterative. Now, I do love to hear this, and I actually am not too sure exactly what this is talking about. I know we have the Valakar, the Apex Valakar in the game right now, at least the irradiated version, and that is technically a boss fight. Now, whether or not that tech will technically transfer to whenever we have these things on Daymar, just the regular Valakars and whatnot, not entirely sure. Maybe this is what they're working on here, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that this is them just genuinely working on a brand new creature and a brand new boss fight across the board, which I really do love. And I'm actually kind of excited for another boss fight in the verse. Now, the other thing worth noting here really isn't that much, just kind of the mention of Mission System V2 and that they're working on that prototype right now. Love to hear it, but not much outside of that. Now, when it comes to the animation section, last month the team progressed with a new ship enter exit template animation alongside pickups for bespoke gameplay features for an upcoming PE release. Not much to say there, but it's nice to hear that it'll be releasing in the near future. And then the facial animation team processed content from June's performance capture shoot, including several new mission givers and a mini boss. That's really the only super exciting thing there, in my opinion, is the fact that we'll be getting more mission givers, and a mini boss of some kind in the pretty near future, I would assume. And then the rest of it is all kind of just regular narrative stuff that they've been doing for the past couple months. And then when we move to the art section, the character art team spent the month creating new armors and armor variants. Meanwhile, the concept art team prepared handoff sheets and began the exploration phase for new flight suits alongside requests from other teams. I do think it's kind of interesting how we're not hearing anything about Starware here, and I don't think we actually have heard anything about Starware for maybe the last month as well. But either way, it's nice to hear that they are working on these. I love variety when it comes to flight suits and armor, so just knowing that they are making more behind the scenes right now is always nice to hear. Now, getting into the ship section, the more exciting section I know for a lot of people. First thing is that the Anvil Paladin had its gray box gate review, and that kind of had some challenges with one of these side turrets, it seems. This is going to result in further rounds of iteration. So I assume that this is going to take some time to get this one out the door, and possibly it's getting delayed internally. But regardless, we never had a release window for it. So hopefully they'll get it out probably before the end of the year. Now, the next thing here is, in my opinion, super exciting. We have the Drake Ironclad. Now, there's a couple further navigation flow updates. They talked about this, I think, last month, including new elevators and revised staircase locations to improve traversal time around the ship. And then the best news here is that the Ironclad Assault also progressed through White Box, with the team implementing the key differences between it and the base. Now, I don't know about you guys, maybe you completely disagree with me, but I am so happy to see the Ironclad Assault actually going into production right now. I generally thought that the base version was going to get all the love, then like 2 years later we get the Ironclad Assault. But to hear that it is working right now and getting into production is really, really nice to hear. And I know it's not a big feature. I know it's not going to push the game closer to what it needs to be, but damn, I love the Ironclad Assault, and I cannot wait to see it in the verse. Next thing is just simply the RSI Meteor was being launched into the PU, and then four unannounced vehicles progressed down the pipeline as well. The first one was entering or leaving White Box. The second one was entering into Gray Box, and then talks about how there were some issues around its cargo mechanism, which kind of just tells me it's a cargo ship. The third one continued through development with just some different refinement going along here. And then the final unannounced vehicle is passing its combined gate review. So I'm assuming we're probably going to see the last two of these in the decently near future. But outside of that, there really isn't much to say. They're all unannounced. So just speculation. Now we are getting to the exciting stuff here. In North America, the RSI Apollo Medivac and Triage passed their Lot Zero reviews and are now in the final stages, with damage setup, paints, and a lot of levels being created. Now, before we get into that a little bit more, we also have the RSI Perseus progressed into the Lot Zero phase. The exterior is now receiving the fine detail work to visually bring it in line with other RSI ships. And then finally, the Drake Kraken had further pre production work done. This identified more areas where kits from the Ironclad will help speed up the production, as well as some more challenging internal areas that require updated concept time, such as engineering and the recently added small medical facility. Now, the most exciting aspect of this section, though, was actually the pictures that go alongside it. The first one being of the Apollo and its cockpit. It looks clean. It looks like an RSI cockpit, but I think the most exciting aspect is the fact that we actually have this ship here. It is very, very close to being done, and it should actually get into our hands within probably the next 2 months or so, but don't take my word on that. Now, another ship as well that we have here is the RSI Perseus, and this one looks amazing. This is my personal favorite, and I just cannot wait to see this thing. It does kind of seem like this ship is very, very close to being done as well, but not entirely sure. When it comes to these bigger ships, these like finer detail faces can take a little bit longer than we realize. Regardless, I mean, you can see the big gun at the end of the ship, you can see a turret on top. I mean, it just looks super clean. I will not lie, I think there's a couple changes from the original concept here that people have noticed, but nothing that I really care about personally. I think it still very much screams Perseus when I look at this picture, and I know maybe some of the fine details have changed, but man, I cannot wait to see this ship in the verse, and I do think we'll probably see it maybe around that CitizenCon time, maybe at IAE. Regardless, beautiful looking ship, and I cannot wait to see it in game. Now, we're going to move on to the core gameplay section here, and that is going to have a lot in it. So, we're going to pass through a couple things here first. Basically, at the start of this, are just talking about freight elevators, working on those a ton. They actually talked about contract generation as well, and how people are kind of going to the same location for so many contracts and making sure they fix that so they utilize all the locations in the verse. And then they also talked about spawning into hangars rather than your hab, and how the work for that is paving the way for allowing players to spawn wherever they were before, within reason, of course. And I think that's a really exciting thing. Hopefully, in the somewhat near future, we can start actually spawning on different parts of planets, just not inside our ship. That would be super cool. And then, of course, they mentioned the freight elevators again and how they're working on that and different parts of the inventory. So that's also good to hear. For crafting, I think there's actually a little bit of a typo here. The team continued reevaluated. So I think they're saying they continued work on it and they reevaluated the scope for the first public release. While the inventory UI concept shown recently on Star Citizen Live entered development, with the team doing preparation work and setting up the new canvas. Two things here. The first thing is I'm not entirely sure what to make of them reevaluating the scope of the first public release. That could mean two things. Maybe they are further along than they thought they were, and maybe they want to add a little bit more or a little bit less. Regardless, I think it's still great news that they're working on it, and it sounds like from just the last couple of months that they are pretty deep into the crafting feature. Next thing is the fact that they're getting this new UI working on. Jared did say that it was not in active development on the Star Citizen Live. Of course he was probably right maybe at the time, but I think it is kind of funny to say that it has entered development now. So I'm really excited to see that though, because the UI looks so much cleaner. And I will throw up a picture here because it looks really good. Next thing, we have hacking gameplay. More options were added to help teach players how to use the feature alongside bug fixing. This sounds really great. Now, I know Copium, Hopium, whatever you want to say, but they have worked on hacking a ton in 2025. And if we're going to be honest here, I think it's a lot closer to release than some of us realize. And I really think we're going to see footage of this at CitizenCon Direct in October. I know we haven't seen anything about it this year, but I really think that's just to save it for that presentation. And You don't have to believe me here, but I do think we are pretty damn close to seeing this feature at least enter the EPTU within, let's say, the next 4 months. And I really hope I'm right about that because they're putting a lot of work into this, and hopefully we can see that in the near future. Now, this one is also really exciting. July saw engineering gameplay enter tech preview preparation. With the devs moving the code into a new staging stream, they also added the ability to limit the number of active items per pool. Thruster temperatures are now visible on the screen, and the iconography, I think I'm saying that right, between the diagnostics and engineering screens have been unified. The team also added further damage balance modifiers, for example, making fuses on sturdier ships harder to destroy. Diagnostics also received severity filters and item categories to make it easier to identify critical issues. This is one of my favorite updates outside of the hacking stuff. I say that for a lot of things, honestly, but I don't really care at this point. I'm excited for it. This is such a great thing because we've been waiting for almost three-fourths of the year to get something into the tech preview channel, which they talked about at the end of 2024. So to hear that this is entering preparation for tech preview is very nice to hear. I suspect we're going to get closer to, maybe late August, early September for tech preview. At this point, I would never trust me because I've made like 3 or 4 guesses on this, but at this point, CIG has said that they're entering preparation for it, so hopefully in the near future, we see engineering. Now, moving on from that, we have a couple things that kind of narrowed down the excitement for just a little bit. A part of the ongoing looting and harvestable quality of life initiative, the team completed a new implementation of loot generation. This system is twice as fast as the previous version and includes better controls for the designers alongside improved debug tools. And then the item expiry feature kicked off, which will allow the designers to define the functionality lifetime of items. This is intended for items such as key cards that are only meant to be usable for a limited amount of time before they become non functional. An item's expiry state and timer will be visible in the inventory. Progress on item recovery tier 1 continued, including various setup and debug tool tasks. So, good news there across the board. Nothing too crazy to get into. Maybe we'll see item recovery tier 1 in the near future, but I really just think they're mentioning that so that we don't feel like they forgot about it, I suppose. And then the team completed the refactor of quantum interdiction for server meshing, which they also talked about. There's a few outstanding tasks to complete that will be delivered as part of future releases. They didn't really go in depth there, so not too much to go over. And then we're kind of back to some of the hype stuff. The team also continued work on the flight system. For example, Control Surface's fly-by-wire system was finished, which will feed pilots commands to IFCS to correctly adjust control surfaces in atmosphere, much like a modern fighter jet would. This also included the implementation of auto trimming and various bugs that came out of playtesting. And then, of course, for the quantum travel system, the team continued working on the implementation of the new mechanics. That includes things like quantum boosting, and I assume the physicalization of quantum travel. It maybe that's already done, but just basically the updated flight model in general is kind of what they're talking about here. I assume this is something they're going to show off at CitizenCon Direct as well. It seems like it's got a ton of work done, and I don't think it's super close to release, but I think it is closer than some people realize. And it does seem like they've made some great progress on it. So hopefully, this is something we will see at CitizenCon Direct, and I am certainly very excited for it. Next thing here is the FPS radar and scanning saw additional progress through July, with further improvements allowing the designers to define custom scan data. AI can now react to being scanned and respond accordingly. Players will now also be able to identify if enemy NPCs have a radar equipped and could perceive the player scanning. These updates sound awesome. Honestly, I love the ability for AI to react to your scan and for you to see if they can see you. I love these things, and it does sound like it's getting pretty refined at this point. We know that this will be coming to the tech preview at some point, so maybe after we get engineering, you can kind of start to expect FPS radar and scanning. But regardless, this is a great update. And then, of course, we have the ongoing transport refactor that continued with additional work for dynamic destinations such as instance hangars. And then core gameplay also supported the content teams in delivering the recent resource drive and escort missions. Couple last things here for the upcoming August release. Core Gameplay worked with the content teams to expose more controls for item rewards. Additional support for the mechanics of an upcoming creature were also provided. That's nice to hear. And then the team had invested time in addressing critical issues preventing the usage of drop off lockers that are required for an upcoming set of missions. Various bugs, edge cases, and exploits were also addressed. So, good news there. Nothing too much to get into, though. Now, moving into the last couple things here for online technology, tasks for Blueprint Library also begin with API development planned for August. This is great news because blueprints are a massive aspect of this game and for crafting. So, hopefully, this gets done in a decently timely manner. But regardless, it's nice to see them working on it. R&D looks like they're just working on performance and optimizing the engine and game code. So, good news across the board. And then UI is working on the Star Citizen Light episode UI that we saw earlier, the really good looking one. And then they also worked on some MFDs for an upcoming vehicle, which has several unique visual features. Nothing crazy there. And that really kind of wraps it up for this video and this monthly report. Honestly, with how down it's kind of felt within Star Citizen and the updates and just kind of what's been going on, getting a monthly report like this is very nice, especially knowing the fact that engineering is really, really close to getting into our hands. We are so, so close. I'm not going to give any guesses at this point. I mean, yes, I will actually. I'm gonna say late August, early September. That is my guess, my final guess. If I'm wrong, I'm just gonna shut my mouth. But besides that, I do think we're going to see a lot of these things at CitizenCon Direct. These are some really great updates, and I know we aren't seeing this in game, and it feels like every time they give us a monthly report with a bunch of meat to it, it just feels like we don't hear about that progress ever until we get another monthly report. But I do have some faith that going into CitizenCon, we're going to gain some momentum. At least I really do hope because I know it's been a bit of a down season for Star Citizen. Though I am really looking forward to hopefully getting some momentum into the launch year for Squadron 42, which is 2026. Outside of that, I know it's a bit of a longer video, but I appreciate you sticking around and watching to the end. I hope you have a wonderful day. I would love to hear your thoughts down below on all of these things, and I will see you in the next video.